Get them likes up. Get them likes up.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. I am reclaiming my time. If you guys want to know who I am, my name is Ameera from the Lapeef Network. Today I want to talk to you guys about a serious topic, and so I want to talk to you all about a serious topic, and let me know if you have any problem hearing me. I am trying out a different camera today, so let me know if there's any issues. Right, so the topic today is something that I heard on the Lapeef Network this past Thursday. Of course, you guys know I wasn't in attendance, but I was in the audience, and I did see that there was a topic brought up about trauma, and how people are affected by it, and I'll give an example. If there's two people who suffer the same event happens to two people, are those two people going to be affected equally? They both witnessed or experienced the exact same thing, no differences. So wouldn't it be the natural thing to assume that both people are experiencing the same trauma or the same amount of it? So the reason I say that is because one of the situations brought up was, I guess, with Anton's situation, like he had I hate to say it this way, Anton, forgive me, but his first experience with a lady was with a girl that was significantly older than him and at that time. So, and Kay had said that because this event happened to him, he must have trauma. Anton differs. Anton begs to differ. He says he doesn't. So can we speak about that together? Does that mean that because this happened to him, he automatically has to be traumatized? And I thought this was very interesting because I've read a lot of studies about trauma and childhood trauma. As you guys know, I'm into that kind of thing. Like mostly I'm into legal things, but I do like to know about childhood, the childhood brain and how it affects us as we get older, how that child still is within us and what that child is doing inside of us as we grow. And I also like to study the brain. And like I said, I brought up the whole lizard brain. We'll get there. We'll get there eventually. But anyway, back to Anton. So when this point was brought up, it really made me think about trauma and how we as adults, how, yes, I think Kay is right that a lot of us do have a lot of trauma that we don't recognize as trauma, but there are things that we naturally do in our daily life that are signs that we do have trauma. Like some people don't like uh, voices raised too loud above a certain decibel because it creates anxiety within you. Is that trauma of sorts? Because maybe when you were younger, every time people raised their voices, bad things happened. Or, people who are very jumpy when doors are shut hard. And some people react differently. Some people are like, oh, the door slammed. But others, they get really anxious and they jump. And this is all a sign of your body being very sensitive to certain things because of trauma. And even how people react to one another in arguments, in relationships, even in work environment, a lot of us act so differently and we don't understand why. So these are all things that I want to bring up with you all, and I want to also tell you this. Because I've studied this, I've been looking at a few of the articles, not articles. They're kind of like, I don't want to say it's like when a PhD person, they write, I don't know, kind of like an essay. They write a story. They write uh, their results that they got out of doing some experiments. Well, there was a doctor. It was a PhD. His name is, I believe, Philip Holcomb. Holcomb. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing it right. You guys know some of my words that I pronounce, I don't pronounce them correctly, but I believe it's Holcomb. It's Holcombe. So I think it's Holcomb or Holcombe. So this PhD, he wrote about trauma and how he noticed when he was doing experiments that he had two people who went through the exact same thing. One person was unscathed, like nothing happened to them. They were just fine the next day and they went back on with their daily life. The other, however, was scarred for life. The other had to get into therapy and find ways of coping throughout this and could not forget the event. For whatever they tried to do, they could not forget the event. So these are the things that I want to talk to you all about, how two people can experience the exact same thing and have completely different traumas or different reactions of the same event. So in Anton's case, is it true that he could actually not be traumatized? Could it be that Kay is labeling him as a trauma victim when he actually isn't? Could it? Could it be that for Anton, this wasn't a traumatic thing? This was something that he was fully capable of experiencing and without any consequences, any bad consequences, while another person experiencing that could look back on it with a lot of regret, um, a lot of fear, a lot of just bad emotions. I want to bring up this article here. I pulled it up and I want to share it with you all today. Give me a second. Okay, so the thing I wanted to bring up with you all, another point that was brought up in the last week's live stream of the Lapeef talk show was about the lizard brain. Oh no, I'm sorry, that wasn't on Lapeef talk. That was on a different show. But we were speaking about the lizard brain, and I wanted to give you guys a little bit more insight on what I was trying to explain there. The lizard brain is, I know it's a weird, term. I know a lot of people can't get past the name, but this is just a nickname for the actual term, which has to do with the limbic system in humans. Now, I noticed there was some confusion with the idea saying that only females have a limbic system. That's completely untrue, and I wanted to point to you guys out that no, everyone has it. Everyone has a lizard brain, the limbic system. So what that is, I know we're going to school now, are we? So the limbic system is, this dates back to centuries ago, back when humans were essentially like lizards. This scientific term, right? So the lizard brain has to do with our natural instincts, our kind of subconscious mind, the things that we don't control that our body does. Example, when we are afraid or when something is coming at us and you freeze up and you stop and you don't know what to do, that's not your brain that told you to do that. You didn't have a thought process to say, I'm going to stay here. No, that's your natural instinct that it just took over you. Another thing that is natural within us that the lizard brain controls is your attitude, things like this. The majority of time, it takes very intelligent, emotionally intelligent, not informationally intelligent. Emotionally intelligent people can control their emotions very like daily. They can control their emotions, but the majority of people, actually, I believe all people, we can't control when an emotion is going to hit us. We can control how we handle it and we can try to pull it back if it's a bad emotion, but we can't control how we're going to feel about something. If something happens in front of you, your limbic system is going to tell you how you're going to feel about said event. So that also has to do with trauma as well, because I think if you put these ideas together, now this is just me brainstorming. Tell me what you guys think about this. It doesn't stop here because I am going to open the call lines. I want to hear what you all have to say about this, because maybe I am tooting my own horn here because I feel like I had some like major breakthrough. So let me be smart for a second. Okay. Idea that your limbic system, your subconscious, right? Your subconscious and your lizard brain that is very old, older than many people. And then you have the trauma that we can experience that not everybody experiences the same. So hear me out here. We have two people, they experience the exact same event, correct? One is traumatized, the other is not. What created the difference? Could it be the environmental factors of that person that created them in this environment to actually be traumatized and the other no? Could it be their limbic system that didn't didn't respond to this event like the other person's limbic system did? Could it be the aftermath of what happened? Could it be aftercare? Because anytime someone experiences something traumatic, there's always aftercare, whether it is therapy. I know even Kevin Samuels is a huge advocate for therapy. Or could it be rest at home, time to talk about it with the family? What creates that trauma and why does it make it so strong? And I really do think that our limbic system has something to do with that. Now, this wasn't in the article. Dr. Holcomb did not put this in the article, but this is something that I've just been brainstorming by myself. And because we had already spoken about this last week about the lizard brain, which a lot of people didn't understand where I was going with that. But because we had already spoken about it, it made me like think. I put just the two together and it just made me think, like, why wasn't Anton traumatized by this event when Kay believes that any child that is touched in a sexual manner before the age of maturity is traumatized? She believes that. She can clarify too, but from what I see, from what she says, it seems that she believes that any child that is touched by an adult before the age of maturity will be traumatized. So and another thing is this. I want to ask you all this. Now, this might be a question that is rather controversial, but hi, I'm Ameera. What is the age of maturity? Who determines the age of maturity? And does that mean that on the date of your 18th birthday, the morning you wake up, that beautiful day when you turn 18, does that mean that all of a sudden you will not be traumatized after you are like 18 by being touched by someone older than you or significantly older than you? The age gap. How big does the age gap have to be to create trauma? There's so many different factors, and it made me think about it because I tend to believe Anton. I believe that he's not traumatized because some people see things differently. You know what I mean? I think even Anton, I think he was grateful for what happened. I know Kay is going to hate me for saying that. Kay, hi, I love you. But I don't know. I tend to believe Anton. I believe what he says, and I think that's another reason why Kevin Samuels advocates so hard for therapy, because these are things that a lot of people, you may be traumatized and you just don't realize it, or can therapy cause you to feel like you're traumatized even though you aren't? I sorry, I actually said that out loud. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But could it be that because you express yourself about something that happened in the past that you may not have felt traumatized about, and then you tell it to another person and they tell you that you're traumatized, would that cause you to feel like maybe you were traumatized? I don't know. This is, like I said, this is me brainstorming. Like, this is me. You guys are getting like an inside look into Ameera brain. This is where my brain goes, and I start thinking about specific uh, things like this and certain variables, and how many variables does it take to make this happen. Do you know what I mean? So I had to get that one out, guys. Thank you all for joining me. So feel free to call in. I hope we can get the link in the chat. I want to hear what you all have to say about this topic. I mean, I know this topic is rather serious and kind of, it can be controversial to some, because I know some people do say that, no matter what, this is what it is. You're going to be traumatized if this happens. And I just tend to not agree. And another thing that I want to tell you is about this age limit. And I know I'm going to get some hate for this, but when it comes to age limit and telling someone what age they are going to be mature enough to engage sexually into things, I'm sorry, guys, but it's just kind of hard to determine, for everyone across the board, because we have to remember not everyone is the same. So what is the age limit for everyone to all of a sudden be sexually mature? I'm not sure. And I don't think it's the same for every person. I don't believe that at 18, all of a sudden everyone is ready. There's some people who won't be ready until 20, 23 maybe. And there's others who are ready maybe at 16, 15. So I would like to hear your point of view. Wolf, tell me, am I losing my mind here?
No, you're pretty good at choosing the controversial subjects.
I'm sorry.
It's not a bad thing. No, it just means you're really good at getting conversations going, and that's what a lot of people need right now. Conversations, not you know, not just listening, but actually having conversations with people. So you're posing an interesting uh, subject there, and I think something that we're leaving out is the power dynamics. A lot of times, the trauma is incurred due to power dynamics.
Okay, I understand that. Yeah.
If someone doesn't have a choice, if they feel they don't have a choice because the person above them is an imposing authority figure, that can be very traumatic. But also, what age did this occur? You don't know.
For Anton?
If he's open to, I guess, have his business out there.
Well, he said it. He said it in public. I'm sure he doesn't mind. He was 11, and the girl was 17.
Okay. Trauma. Let me think. So when you read about the victims of the Holocaust, or sorry, the survivors of the Holocaust, in the early years after they were liberated or rescued and restarted their lives, they were perfectly fine. It was, to some degree, a lot of them acted like nothing had happened. But when they finally got into a situation where their limbic system, calmed down to start processing things. So things that happened to them, during the Holocaust, they didn't actually start to fully acknowledge or experience until 10 years later when they're out of it and they're finally in a situation where they can comfortably process and release that. Now, the amazing thing about children is one of the things that makes them resilient is that a lot of times they're very good at blocking things or hiding things that they're concerned about because they don't know how to define it. It's kind of a key characteristics of a lot of children that are taken advantage of at a young age. They don't know how to express themselves. They don't even know if it is or is not wrong.
Well, yeah, that's what they say. Ignorance is bliss.
I would venture to say that there are things that he just hasn't dealt with and doesn't know that it needs to be dealt with.
With Anton?
Yes, with that type of with that age and those different power dynamics, I.
But is there really a power dynamic? Just hear me out for a second. These two, from what he says, it wasn't something where it was just an acquaintance. They knew one another. He was, from what it seems like, he was already sexually mature. Like he was already mentally ready for that. I know this sounds so bad, God, because I just think of an 11-year-old child, and I'm just like, it's just so hard for me to fathom an 11-year-old being sexually.
Well, when you look, in the past for the past several thousand years of human civilization, functional societies that succeeded did not have very early age
Maturation?
sexual maturation. They may have been, your body has to get ready for it. So physically, yeah, everything may have, been in place, but as a functional civilization, they didn't start like, and I didn't research this subject ahead of time, or else I would have had all the numbers. But when you look at like early marriages, when people were expected to start having children, it wasn't at 11 years old for either.
No.
And when you look at civilizations that do practice, very early age sexual exploration, they are not typically functional civilizations or functional societies.
You think not?
No.
Because I'm looking at India. India has a lot of that. China had a lot of that. Even the Middle East had a lot of that. And yes, there are countries that are still way behind, but then there's a lot of Middle Eastern countries that are very much advanced. Same with India. Like in India, I don't know. I guess it has taken them a long time to advance too. But China, on the other hand, has just come into being advanced. I guess
that would take a lot more. There would need to be a lot more specific studying on that subject.
Yeah. I mean, so what do you think about this? Two people experience the same event. One person is traumatized and the other is not. What is the difference between the two? Could it be the limbic system that didn't react the same way as the other person's limbic system? Or could it be only environmental factors? Or could it be what? Aftercare? What do you think?
Well, are we talking about the very exact same situation?
Very exact situation. In fact,
well, then it's just they just processed it differently, and that's been one of the most difficult things about studying the psychology of humans is that we all have our own mental models about how the world works, and we can't look into each other's mental models. So one person realized automatically, well, something I don't like they were taken advantage of, and they did not know how to process that event. And then the other person probably just repressed it pretty well. And, it's very possible, there's people that will live their entire lives and not process certain things that have been stuck inside them the whole time.
Yeah.
And there's people that, when they're in their late 30s, late 40s, late 50s, even late 70s,
it comes
will
out.
finally process something that occurred when they were a child,
Mm-hmm.
because it's taken them that long to learn those lessons in that area of maturity to realize, well, this is something that needs to be looked at.
Mm. Thank you, Wolf, so much for your insight on that. I do appreciate it, and you're always bringing the intelligent insight. I appreciate you so much.
No problem.
Hi, Hentai.
Hi, Ameera. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm not too bad. Hey, listen, I won't take up too much time here, but I did want to address one thing.
Yeah.
I think that trauma is subjective, like very subjective. It depends on the individual. It depends on the maturity of the individual. Like if you say a child gets a scrape, right? A child tends to react to that like it's an amputation, whereas if an adult gets a scrape, they react to it like it's an inconvenience. And I think it's a lot of it's a matter of perspective, and it's very individual.
You're right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That does make a lot of sense.
So, but I mean, that's really all I had. I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much.
No
That was
problem.
short and sweet. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye. See, those kind of responses, they say everything in one sentence. And I think he's right that the variables have to be maybe the maturity level of the person and the way they process it, I'm assuming. It has to be something like that. That's why I tell you, we cannot label everyone that we see, like things that we think are traumatic may not be traumatic for the next person. So in Kay's case, if I were to speak with Kay about this, I would possibly bring this up to her, like, you know, maybe you may see it as a traumatic event, but maybe another person doesn't see it that way. And also, we don't know the level of maturity of said person. We weren't in their shoes. We don't know what they were feeling at the moment, and we don't know how they thought about it after. Because after something happens, we all tend to look back on what happened and think like, oh, I wish I could have done this better. We all do it. Don't you cannot tell me you haven't done this. Like, have you ever had an argument with someone? Like, okay, so you have an argument with someone. Let's say it's a coworker. So you have an argument with a coworker, and then you go to your car and you're driving home after work, and you're thinking to yourself, "Ooh, I should have said this. I should have said that. Like, oh, I just wish I would have." So I think that's another thing about events and trauma. Like the way that we look back at said events, do we look back at them fondly or not fondly? I mean, of course, it doesn't have to be something good. You may not look at it fondly. You may look at it like, I wish things could have been a little bit different. I wish I could have been a different person. I could have done something different. There's a lot of people. Look, I wanna do this with you guys just really quickly. And I know this might hurt a little bit if you take it seriously, what I'm about to say. If you take this seriously, it might hurt. I want, like, this is an exercise that many people will tell you to do, psychologists and so on. They tell you to look back into your childhood, look back into the past, and remember the most traumatic event that ever happened to you. Remember how you felt in that moment. Remember how you reacted to said event. And if you were the adult, if you were the parent to yourself, like if you were able to walk in and see your child self, what would you do? What would you do to your child self at that moment? And the idea is to make yourself your parent, right? Because maybe you didn't have someone to protect you at a certain time in life. Maybe no one was there. But what the experiment, not the experiment, the exercise is trying to get you to do is to mentally soothe yourself, to mentally grab up your child self and hold them and tell them it's going to be okay when no one else did. So that can be a very hard exercise to do for a lot of people who have suffered through things unspeakable, you know, like that can be a very hard thing to do because everyone can remember themselves at one point in time as a child and being alone, frightened, hurt, scared, and no one was there to pick them up. So the idea is to pick yourself up as an adult because now you're better. and you can heal that child that didn't have it, didn't have an adult to help them. So I don't know, guys. Like for me, child, like I have to be honest with you. I really do. I'm gonna look into this because I really do think that our God, here we go, our lizard brain. I do believe that our limbic system has something to do with how we experience trauma, but I need to figure out a way that I'm going to put these two together. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. I have to figure out a way I need to put these two together, because if I can put this together and it all makes sense, I am so going to write an article about this. This is going to be my personal, my personal intellectual thing. So hold on 1 second, guys. 1 minute. Okay. So yeah, that's one thing that I would like to do. I would like to connect these two things and write an article about it. You guys cannot tell me I can't. I'm gonna look at your comments really quickly because I want to respond to your comments at least before we take off here. 1 minute, guys. I'm pulling it up. Thank you, Sarah, again. I want to say thank you. Let's see. Alexandra says, hold on 1 second. Alexandra says, do you have a topic? YouTube is not a place to seek therapy. Oh, goodness. Well, I don't know. That was definitely a response to someone else. Here, hold on. Larry says he was very protected as a child and he slept. I slept through the only event that would have traumatized me. Thank God for sleeping, right? Oh no, Upheck, I can't say your name. Upheck said he's going to cry. Please don't cry, guys. I know what I said is hard, and it is hard to look back at yourself like that, but sometimes it's necessary to do it to heal yourself. Like we can heal ourselves and be our own parents now that we're adults. Shay says, I think Kay's objection might be, why would it be traumatic for a girl, Anton's age, but not for a guy, especially if girls are said to mature faster than guys? Well, that would be the reason. Okay, so I understand what you're saying. Like, why is there a gender discrimination in trauma? I understand that point. The reason I say that is because I guess I want to say the power dynamics when we have. No, just work with me here. Hear me out, guys. Hear me out. I'm just thinking here. I'm thinking it has to do with the power dynamics. And when you have a little boy versus a little girl, God, that doesn't make sense. Because even if, so let's say in Anton's case, the girl was older, right? She was older, and for that reason, I guess she had a certain power over him for her age. You could say that. So, yeah, I guess it doesn't make sense. I'm not saying, in my case, I don't believe that because he's a boy, he's not traumatized. That's not the reason at all that I said that he's not. I didn't say it for gender, but I understand what you're saying, that some people could argue it's a boy, that's why we don't see it as traumatized. Let's think about it. If it were a girl, if Anton was a girl, Anton in his pink robe, if Anton were a girl and he told us that when he was 11, he had his first sexual experience, or she had her first sexual experience with a man, a boy, who was 17 years old, would that be traumatizing? Or how would we look at that? I'm sure we would see it as more disgusting because we tend to think of girls as innocent, more innocent. I don't know. That is really sad. You guys, I get what you're saying completely. I know it sounds bad. Hi, Simon.
You're right, Ameera.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
You're right.
Yes, I'm all right. What do you think about the topic?
I don't really think we all experience trauma equally. I'm not sure how that's possible.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
What's your thoughts?
I know we have a delay. I can tell we have a delay, but I can understand that we have differences. Like, why is it different? Do you have an idea of why?
Well, just people are different. So depending on your environment, your experience, the country you live in, you know, there's loads of, as you say, variables that will spell out how trauma is experienced by different people. That you know, makes it very different for everybody. I think the whole conversation with Anton and Kay was interesting, and everyone, you know, obviously Kay coming from an educational standpoint and Anton being Anton, there's a difference in thought around that whole thing. You know, so if someone's saying to you that I haven't actually experienced trauma, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have, because they're in denial.
Okay, I understand, but Simon, let me ask you this. Can you tell a person that they are traumatized even though they do not feel traumatized? Are you then trying to make them traumatized even though they're not?
There's two parts to that, what you just said there. So you can tell a person they're traumatized, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are.
Right.
Let's say if you was in a traffic accident or incident, I don't know the language phrase over there. You got hit, but it wasn't too bad. But to the onlooker, it was a shock, because they've never seen someone get hit in a traffic accident before. Let's say you were cycling and a car hit you, but it wasn't too hard for you as the cycler, because it may have happened before, or you may have experienced something before that was
similar.
You know, so yeah, similar. Good one. So, but to the onlooker, they may have not seen anything like that before. They may have come from a perspective where that was a huge shock. They may take it on themselves to over exasperate the situation and put it on you that you're traumatized, and you might be like, oh no, I'm fine. I've been through something like this before. I could just get back on my bike. The wheels ain't bent. I'm on my way to work.
Well, Simon, in this case, let me ask you this. In this case, where you're saying that the person is telling you, I'm traumatized because I saw you get hit. So this person is then going to tell you, you might be traumatized by it too, but you don't realize it. You don't know it. So this is what we have right now, where even though we're saying the person is just fine, like Anton, he's just fine, but we have another person saying, you just don't know it. So this is where I'm saying, like, what can we do? Do you think? Lastly, just before we get to Sarah, I want to ask you this: do you think that therapy is the only way to find out if you truly have trauma or not?
It depends on your character, to be honest. I won't downplay therapy, but I think it's almost like the scenario we just discussed. I think therapy is a good thing, but it really depends on the situation. There's a lot of situations that's been put out there, like, you know, a lot of things that people gone through in the last couple of years, where a lot of people, where therapy would help, but you know, it depends on your situation, to be honest. I wouldn't downplay therapy. I think therapy is a good thing, but in regards to this specific subject, you know, it's here or there.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. You too.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Ameera.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Excellent conversation.
Thank you so much. I know it's a hard one. It's kind of hard. You have to.
It can be.
Yeah. What do you think about it?
Well, I definitely believe that to answer your question, no two people experience trauma the same, male, female, and it's also how a person, like you said, their perspective and how they see a situation, right? Um, and also, there are times when people don't, like you said, they don't know the level of trauma they're experiencing to they're confronted with something later that's similar and it triggers them, right?
Right.
It's like if I'm isolated and I'm not dealing with a particular situation, then you put me in that situation, it can be overwhelming.
I see.
Hmm.
So, just like I asked the other gentleman, what do you think about this trauma being hidden and people not knowing that they're traumatized and being designated or labeled as a traumatized person, even though they're not? How would what would be the 100% way to figure out if you're traumatized or not? Do you believe that therapy is the only way to find out if you're actually traumatized?
No, because I believe in relationships and just your daily life, something will come up and present itself, and how you navigate that situation will determine, are you angry? Are you sad? Are emotions that are flooding you that you can't deal with? Um, Things like that. If a person says they're not traumatized, I believe them. You know what I'm saying? So now if you are, then I definitely think you should address it,
So do you think that
right?
you only know when you're put in certain situations? That's the only way that you're gonna know? Because a lot of people are curious. One, I want to bring you up one example. One example would be the people that call into even Kevin Samuel's show. If you
Hmm.
notice, a lot of them have different stories, and a lot of them speak about traumatic events with a blank face, completely blank face. And Kevin, he's we all know that he's a huge advocate for mental health and therapy. So he
Hmm.
recommends that everyone gets therapy just to get a clean bill of health. I don't know if therapy is the, as they call it, the end all be all to find
Hmm.
out if you are traumatized or not. So, what do you think?
Well, I don't watch Kevin Samuels. I saw him on your show and a few other people's shows,
Mm,
but I can tell you why people are blank when a situation that could be traumatizing to another person. Like I can tell my own trauma, right? And I'm
mm,
not going to experience all the emotions attached to it because I've dealt with it.
mm.
So you'd be like, oh, that was so awful. She just stated that like it was like, I want some potatoes and french fries. She was indifferent about it, and she's talking about something that's so traumatizing, right?
Yeah.
But they don't know the years and years of therapy that I've addressed those situations, and I'm not in that place, right?
So you
and
would
then
rather? Oh, go on. Sorry.
And also, you have to take into account, I believe, I know Anton's story. And the fact is, he has spiritual grounding, right?
Mm,
And spirituality has a way of you being able to process things and put them in a perspective or deal with them different than a person who doesn't have that grounding,
very true.
you
Very.
know? So I know my spiritual life has helped me tremendously. So, yeah.
So, if you don't mind me asking, so the way that you dealt with your trauma, because that's another question that I have is how is one to deal with this? If they do have it, you've already found out that you do and you diagnosed it, and what do you do?
Well, oh my God, that is so. Everyone's journey is going to be different, right? I worked in social service for many years,
Mm,
and I remember this lady in particular. She lost her son, right? He was murdered. I live in Chicagoland area,
oh,
and she said it happened maybe 7 years prior to me going to see her.
mm,
She was not living. She was like the living dead.
oh,
She wasn't doing anything. She was on all these psychotropic meds. She just stopped living because she didn't process any of that, right?
mm,
And so then you'll go to another person who's person, maybe their child was murdered 3 months ago, but they became advocates. They moved, they started to be involved and advocate for other people's children, right? So everybody process things different. And so
do you believe that, I'm sorry to cut you off, I just want to get an answer from you. Do you believe that her way of fixing her trauma or addressing it was through advocation, but the other lady's way of addressing her trauma was through the taking of medications? But in your case, I want to know, in your case, what did you do specifically to cure yourself of this burden?
well, you can't say cure because you know how people say, I took a break in a relationship to work on myself, and then they get in this new relationship and the new person triggers them. And all of a sudden some emotions come up like, man, I've been working on this all this time and I thought I had resolved that issue, right? So I protect my environment. I went through therapy for many years. I'm a spiritual person, so I believe in prayer. And I live under a covenant that, that I believe has declared that I win, right? So I'm not going to live in this victim mentality that I can be defeated in any way. So I'm not going to allow what had happened to me when I was 3, 5, 10, whatever, to destroy the rest of my life. That's how I saw it. You took a moment, but I'm not going to be a victim where you're going to take the rest of my life.
Right.
So that's how I addressed it.
So we go from the victim to the victor.
Exactly. I'm not going to be a victim. You might see it, I was victimized, but I'm victorious, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's how I see it. Yes.
Thank you. I know someone out there needed to hear that, because people who are watching, I'm sure, can relate to having this, and just hearing words of strength like that is appreciated. Thank you so much, Miss Sarah.
You're welcome, Ameera.
You're welcome to come back anytime you want.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Mr. RCC.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm not too good with this. It's good that you're talking about this, and I think it's amazing that a lot of people are now finally getting the help. We as Black people, we constantly are presented with significant stresses that we have to deal with, both at a young age and even at an older age, right? You see some very traumatic things. I mean, you'd be amazed how many kids have seen dead bodies and blood spattered on grounds, right? I grew up in Detroit, right? I mean, there's blood on walls all the time. We're going to the store as kids riding their bikes. But ultimately, it is how you respond to it. And we talk about trauma as severe events such as sexual trauma or violent trauma. But there can even be some small things that could be traumatic that you may not even realize were there. Here I am, I'm 50 years old, and say maybe 5 or 10 years ago, I nearly broke down in tears coming to the realization that I didn't get a birthday cake when I was a kid, not realizing that trauma was sitting, in the back of my head, that, wow, I was hurt, right? All these years, not even realizing that this, and ultimately what you've got to do is say, you know what, I forgive that, and you let it go. Right. So now whenever I go to a restaurant, I make sure I get a candle on all of my cakes.
Oh. I think regarding that, I don't think it's so much the cake. I think it's more like you felt like you deserved something, or you wanted something. You wanted some, not attention. You wanted to.
Right.
What is the word? God, give me the word.
It's just an acknowledgement,
Yeah, you want to be recognized.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like I said, it wasn't necessarily the cake, but you're right. I'm thinking, why was that so hard? Why couldn't I have something, right? And I have a nephew, as a young kid, I tripped him just playing around, and I mean, he was really extremely upset with it, to the extent that he wanted me to apologize. I'm playing with him as a kid, and even today, I think he's still, right, feels a certain way, right, about that event. I have kids, and right, and when one of them gets something, the other one just wants something as well. And like I say, those types of events, even though they're small, right, they can sit in the back of your mind and create a trauma. And ultimately, it's how you deal with it, right?
I'm
You
so
know,
glad I was the only child.
I'm sorry.
I'm so glad I was the only child.
Well, yeah, only child. That's a whole nother ball game, right? Yeah. You're so used to getting everything, right?
Oh, I got everything.
But no, ultimately, you know, with all traumas, right, you have to treat it as if someone gave you a bag of, you know, poop, right? You're not going to just carry that bag of poop around. You have to let it go, right? And the best way to let it go is to just forgive that incident and let it go and move forward, right? They say it's not the bite that kills you, it's the venom that travels through your body that kills you. And as longer you hold on to that, right, it's going to hold you back from moving forward.
So how did you take care of this trauma that you experienced? I mean,
With the
what
cake,
did you mean just that's all you did was do the cake and make sure that every time you did
once you acknowledge it and forgive the person that you have perceived traumatized you, right, then you can move forward. And sometimes it's as simple as saying, you know what, I forgive you, right, and then you're just letting it go and move forward.
This sounds like Jesse Lee Peterson. I know Jesse Lee Peterson speaks on going and forgiving your mother.
No, I can't say the same as it relates to sexual trauma or a violent trauma, right? But you know, but to a certain degree, right? When a male is sexually traumatized, so long as it's not a sodomy or anything, it's a little easier to move forward. Whereas when a woman, right, you have the risk of pregnancy, right? So there's a certain level of trauma associated with that as well, right? Whereas a guy, it's like, okay, that was mostly pleasure for me, right? So it's hard to recognize it as a trauma, which is why you see all these men coming out saying, hey, I was traumatized, but they didn't recognize it as trauma at the time.
Let me speak about this with you. Since we've gone into this topic, one of the commenters said that we see girl trauma different versus boy trauma, and especially when we see sexual activity under the age of 18, we see it differently for men and women. Now, I want to talk to you about this because you seem like you were kind of getting on this topic. Under the age, when you see that a girl, she has sexually experienced before the age of so-called maturity, of American maturity, why is it taken differently than boy?
Because there's the risk of pregnancy.
I mean,
right. And so there's nothing, there's mostly just pleasure when it comes to a boy. Whereas woman, right, you might be tight, right? So it might be sore, right? So now that's going to linger as well, right?
I think also the anatomy of it all. The anatomy of it all is actually, God, this is going to sound, okay, we're all adults here, okay? Yeah. A woman is actually penetrated versus actually being the penetrator.
Right.
So I think that's the reason why that's why we see it differently.
Right. Because I would assume a woman could still feel that weeks, months, and even subconsciously years later.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas a man, you really aren't, nothing is really changing. I mean, so I think that's why it's harder for men to recognize it as a trauma, because you probably had some physical damage, right? As a woman, right? There could be bleeding, right?
Yeah.
But for a boy, you may not have that physical damage to recognize it as a trauma. I mean, you see many men claiming that, oh yeah, I was traumatized. Yeah, there was a pleasure. There was no physical damage, done to you, but there could very well have been blood drawn, right, for a girl, and the risk of pregnancy, right? So that's a separate set of trauma that a woman's going to have to deal with.
Thank you so much for your insight. I really appreciate it because I hadn't spoken about it yet, and this makes a lot of sense to me. But thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And people want to talk about the age thing. In your culture, right? There's arranged marriages, right? So if you're groomed, right, at a very small age to know you're going to marry a certain person, you're prepared for that relationship, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that if it's 14 or 18, right? Once you reach puberty, technically you're at an age where you can give birth, right? So if your parents already know who you're going to marry, right, you're probably groomed for that relationship. So you can't necessarily say that that's a trauma, because you've been prepared for this relationship probably before you were born. You know, I mean, if they already know the family, right, that you want to be a part of, they already know who you're going to marry. Right. So okay, so yeah, you're 14-year-old with a 30-year-old man or whatever. And I don't know if that's the extreme, but you've probably been groomed for that relationship at a very young age. And you've seen it over again, right, within your family. So you really almost can't really call that a trauma, right? Because that they've prepared that child to be in that relationship. I mean, and like I say, in the wild, once you start, that period, it's time for you to have babies. I mean, what are you waiting for? Here, right? If you can't manage your house,
I'm so sorry. I do have to move on.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Polar Bear.
Hey, Ameera, how you doing today and tonight?
I'm doing good.
Good. Hey, very good topic, first of all, that you're bringing up. And before I say anything, I would actually, if you have kind of like a revisit on this topic, great lady. She has her own YouTube channel. She is a medical professional in this sort of field about, various medical health, mental issues. Dr. Tracy Marks, spelled Tracey.
Okay.
Last name Marks, Marks.
Okay, Tracy.
Yeah, do you want to respell that?
Nope, I found her. She has a lot of videos on a lot of mental issues, ADHD, bipolar, anxiety, depression.
Exactly. So, all of us here that are calling in that are not professionals in it, including myself, I am definitely not a professional of any sort in this field. But if you really want to get good information, and that could be shared to the audience, someone, either her or someone of her caliber, would be an excellent resource.
Okay.
Having said that, go ahead.
What do you have to think about the subject? Like when I'm speaking about two people experiencing the same event and one being traumatized and the other not, what do you see in that?
I believe that it can be very much individualized. Okay. It can depend on a whole variety of factors.
I'm sorry, I have to go get something out of my eye.
Sure.
Something's killing
Sure,
me.
no
I'll
problem.
be right back, guys.
All right.
1 minute. Sorry about that. I had my eyelash fall into my eye and it was killing me. Okay.
Don't you just hate when that happens, right?
No, I hate it. Sorry.
To respond to it, and again, my opinion is no better than the next person, since I'm not a professional in the field, but just my personal perception on it is that it is highly individualized, whether you're male or female. I think if you're older, you might have a better capacity to understand situations and to react and whatever. I think younger, you're more susceptible. However, I don't think there's a specific age that someone is able to adapt to something versus not. There's not like a light switch that goes on or off. There might be some propensity between male and female reacting to certain things, but I think generally it's not a huge difference. I think it's very much on your physiology, your age, and just kind of what you grew up in, and no disrespect to the previous gentleman, but just because other people may have, quote, prepared you for something, that doesn't mean that you yourself were prepared for it. You know.
You think not?
Say that again.
You think not? Can you expand a little bit?
Yeah. So it may help in some circumstances. I'm not saying it's never applicable, but I don't think that it's a surefire guarantee that just because you had a group of people that was bringing you up to quote prepare you for something, that you're actually truly, your mind is truly prepared for it. It could be something that even though you had all this information and it had been a few years or whatever the case may be, and this is what you're going to do as you get older, and this is the role you're going to play, and this is what actions you're going to have to take, it really doesn't mean that you are actually truly prepared for it. I mean, military people go through training to prepare for war in case they have to go into combat. However, all that training may or may not go completely out the window once they're in a combat situation and their fellow soldiers and such, sailors, are blown apart to bits. You got like somebody's thumb that's stuck in your mouth, you know, that used to be your best friend. All sorts of things can happen.
Wait, why was their thumb in your mouth? Okay, never mind.
I'm just saying, you know, let's say you had your mouth open and your neighbor got, or your buddy, they got blown up and it just got projected into your mouth. I just looked at a silly example, but you know, you're covered in the blood of your friend.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you. But that's a great analogy. You're right that you can prepare all your life for war, but once you're actually in it, I understand. Thank you so much, Bolivar. I appreciate your insight.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Have a great night.
Night.
Good night.
I can't read your name. How do you pronounce it?
It's Gas Mask Tribe TV, but it's just Biz. Can you hear me all right?
I hear you better now. When you started, you were really low.
Okay, what about now?
Yep. It's good.
So this is really great. This is deja vu, but this is so great. Homage, pay homage. So great. But trauma is it's the experience on it is pretty well. I appreciate the other callers, you know what I mean, for giving their points across of how they, you know what I mean, what the experience. And Polar Bear also explained about you know, the real professionalism in the study to go research on that, you know. I get it. But I think this is real more an experience thing, you know. For me, I'm a foster kid, so being a foster kid, trauma is different. Mother, you know, prostitute, father committed suicide. So I'm, you know, as an entertainer.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh no. It's cool. I toured the country and being a drummer throughout the world. I ended up learning a lot throughout that, you know, going through trauma.
Yeah.
Just the bad part, you know what I mean? They're learning how to be able to flip that into a positive. So this is a, you know what I mean, this is a great conversation, you know, to have. So, you know.
So what did you I know we don't have to get too into detail because I'm sure you're not here to, you know, throw your whole life out here to the rest of the world. But
it's there. It's out there. I mean, it's all in the music, you know, when I tour with the friends, it's out there. So
do you put some of your stories in the music so that others can hear and learn from it?
Yeah, I really do. I really do, because I only want to talk to the people that have gone through the experience that I've went through and the trauma, you know what I mean? Because for us, it's not really a easy thing to get past, you know. Foster kids don't talk about their life. It's kind of like shunned upon because we're kind of kicked out from the crowd, you know what I mean? Because of the no one wanted to long for you, you know what I mean? But you know, people like myself, you know, we tend, and it's not like a race thing. It's I've been in rooms where I've seen my white counterparts in the same position, you know, I am. I mean, their mom's on heroin and pops is, you know.
Thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate you pointing that out. It's not a race thing, but I have my best friend as well. She kind of suffered the same thing. This is why I kind of understand what you're saying here. And she struggled a lot and still struggles to this day with this feeling of abandonment and rejection. And she, now she's married, happily married, but before she could not handle even trying to have a relationship, because the moment that anyone denied her anything, it would send her into a frenzy. She would be enraged, and I couldn't understand why. Just someone telling her no, or you're not accepted here, or anything, she would lose it because of that. And yeah,
So
it's
the I believe someone else said it before on the caller, but women do experience trauma a lot more different than men do.
how
There's a
so?
study. Well, okay, so for this instance, there's a study that women, which is, I mean, I don't think it's like a one is worse than the other. It's not like that. But what it is I feel it's not that men deal with it easier. We just deal with it in our own way, and women deal with it in their way. You know what I mean? For instance, women become more, exclusive. They become more shunned in, like, you know what I mean? When they're dealing with men, we kind of act out, you know what I mean, as kids. And, what I mean, we do things to show that, we're going through something. And okay, so when I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was like about 87, right? And they said it was a mental thing, but it wasn't. I don't think it was. I've managed great without it. But they said it was a mental thing, and my sister also. But my sister was more, to herself, more like, what I mean, at that time. And I was more active, fighting a lot, what I mean, involved in gangs in LA, what I mean, there was just so much I was just doing while being this drummer, you know what I mean, as at a young age, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
so I do feel women and men kind of deal with it a lot differently, you know what I mean?
So,
Um,
what, in your experience, how were you? I mean, aside from the music, I know you mentioned the music, but is there another way that you would recommend for people to address certain traumatic events that have happened to them?
See, that's that's another thing where people say, "Oh, well, I'm not a professional because everyone's different." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I I try to keep it on the tone of happiness. If a person can always find a way to keep love around it, you know what I mean? That tends to keep the negativity away. It's kind of like a protection. You know what I mean? And I know people say it's hard to find love, or I mean, just someone that cares a lot about your self awareness. You know what I mean? And
Were you able to find your family after all of this? Because one of the ways, I'm only asking you this because one of the ways that I say that you can help address traumatic events is to use your family and use the people around you. That's why I'm curious. Were you ever able to find your family?
it was it for me. I I wasn't able to find that like actual love where people, you know what I mean, say. So when I say keep love around you, I literally mean like keep the things that you love that keeps you happy around you. You know what I mean? Because not you can't always depend on family all the time. You know what I mean? To be the ones to kind of like that self care in a way. Sometimes your friends tend to be the ones to like come closer than your family sometimes, you know what I mean? So you might
Yeah.
have a great friend that really cares about you and your well-being. And it's kind of like that simple, but a lot of people don't, they kind of like shun their own friends away from them in a way.
Well, there
And
is a saying. There's a saying that says your friends are God's apology for your family. So
right,
I,
right,
yeah,
right,
that's true.
right.
But you didn't answer my question. Were you able to find your actual family after all of this?
My actual family, yes, yes, I was able to find them. Of course,
Okay.
things weren't like all peaches and cream, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? But
of course.
being where I've gone and being a man and wanting to discover who my lineage is and discover who we are in America, discover, you know what I mean? And it was for me. And that's how I would say I overcame the trauma. I literally went beyond just slavery. I went, all the way to Portugal where these people were castrated out, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. So I mean, I kind of saw where the trauma came from, and that helped me out, you know what I mean? And I was able to kind of get past a lot, like even past family stuff, because sometimes they are who they are. We can't change that, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's because of those things we may not see or we may not discover, that tells us what life is. You know what I mean? Sometimes we don't discover these things. A lot of people aren't exposed. I was telling a friend the other day that a lot of my friends aren't exposed to the things I'm exposed to. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I'm a married man. I have three beautiful biracial kids. And it's beautiful. I mean, but I had to learn a lot by being, I mean, having kids and trying not to keep, keeping the trauma, I mean, like, look, I got to watch what I do. I got to watch what I say. I got,
Mm.
one thing can trigger certain things. I mean, I heard you on, you were talking to a young lady before about her and her daughter, and her daughter was, lesbian, and, Mr. Samuels came on.
Well, she wasn't. She didn't say her daughter was lesbian. She said that she suspected that her daughter liked girls a little bit too much.
Okay.
But yeah, she did. Yeah.
Right, and I'm I'm not gonna, but I do see that, like, those are things that I see as parents we have to guard, we have to protect, and in these day and times we have to shelter our kids in these day and times, even with media, you know what I mean. We really have to shelter what they see, what they eat, how they, how they're picking their friends. We can't tell them what to pick, but we can tell them how they're picking their friends. You know what I mean? Show them how to pick friends, because certain friends bring certain trauma, certain things across. You could be out with a friend and certain things that happen. And you know what I mean? There you go. And
Yeah.
as parents, that's our job, is to get them ready for the world.
Right.
But thank
Yeah,
you
I
so
mean, we
much.
just have to find that balance of protecting them too much, sheltering them too much, versus letting them experience too much. And I think American parents
Yes.
are American parents are very kind, because you just said, like, well, we can't tell them who their friends could be. We just have to let them choose. For us,
No, no,
we
no, no.
tell them who's your friend's
Hey,
gonna
check.
be.
Oh, okay, so check. No, I'm saying in a way like fruits, right? Like, you got to pick good fruits. So, like, even in America, there's so many friends around. You know what I mean? There's so many people around America that even having kids now, when they go to school, they're going to be exposed to so many other friends, right? I mean,
Mm,
so many other people. I'm sorry, right?
right.
And with that, we may not know who they pick as the person they so much connect with. This is America; it's a melting pot. You know what I mean?
Mm,
So we don't know what type of. Yes, we could want to, like, hey, only stick with this. Only, you know what I mean? Here, oh, we could homeschool them, and then there you go. You'd be great. You can 24/7.
Case
Case
solved.
closed. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if they're going into the communities of the places where we live at, you know what I mean, then it's you're going to see some Latinos in your community. You're going to see, you know, you know, African Americans. You're going to see, Middle Easterns. I mean, it's just kind of a melting pot in where we live at, in a way. I know we have our certain communities in LA where you have Chinatown, you have Koreatown, I mean, I get it, we do have them, but those kids are exposed to other communities, you know
So
what I
I'm
mean?
curious about you. You said that you do music. What kind of music do you do?
It's alternative hip hop, hip rock, alternative hip rock.
So it's like alternative rock mixed with hip hop, kind of
Right,
like. Okay.
right, right, right.
Okay. And
It's
and what's your handle? Like, what's your stage name?
Dirty Harvard.
Dirty Harvard.
Right, right,
Dirty Harvard. That's
right.
that's yeah, that's different. Like Dirty Harry, but Dirty Harvard.
Right, right. And it came I was doing a big concert in Elsit and having a crazy sweater. And they were like, "What's the band name?" And I was like, "It's Biz." And they were like, "Yeah, whatever. That sucks. Um, what's the band name?" And so I told them I was like, "It's Dirty Harvard." And they were like, "Yeah, we love it." And so I just kind of ran with that. But
That's a good name. It's
yeah,
nice because you think about like someone wearing a Harvard sweater and it's like
right,
dirty with mud, Dirty Harvard. Yeah.
right, Dirty
That's what
Harvard.
I thought about. I don't know. I don't know.
Right,
Maybe.
right. So, but it literally came from oxymoron for me, coming from this rags to riches, type of world, coming from this mental illness, foster care type of mentality, and kind of growing into running a couple companies now and being able to maneuver across America and international. So
Good
yes, you know
job.
what I mean. Yeah, yeah, you know what I mean. It's definitely, I am, helping cats, get past it. You know what I mean? I'm really helping a lot of musicians, because a lot of musicians go through mental illness so bad. You know what I mean? Like, our dopamine don't get fit. We don't release a lot of dopamine. You know what I mean? Because if we do a song, we want the world to hear it, and they don't hear it, and then now they're like, oh, now they're stressing
Right.
out and they're trying to find ways to. So I'm showing, I show cats how to, like, find business funding, how to keep themselves maneuvering. You know what I mean? And throughout life. So You
So
know what I
this
mean?
hasn't brought you down at all, it looks like. And this is just
Oh, wait. Now, I get, I've had my, I've had my dark days,
that's not what I said. I
but
said it hasn't brought you down. I
no,
understand that
no,
everybody has their days, but
no.
you haven't been stopped from it. If you
I
do want
haven't.
to speak on the
I haven't.
struggles, feel free.
Well, it's the willpower. You know what I mean? It's a lot of willpower. A lot of people don't have effing willpower. Passion only goes so long. You know what I mean? And it burns out. So it's the willpower. It's like how bad do you really want this to happen? How
Hmm.
bad do you want this change to happen? And
Hmm.
that willpower changes a lot. It separates the girls to the from the women. It separates the boys from the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Willpower is such a hard thing that people don't, I mean, they don't consume much, you know what I mean?
Do you ever watch Anton?
Yes, I do. I watch Anton pretty, I mean, pretty a lot, you know what I mean?
Anton speaks a lot about this, where he doesn't use the word willpower, but he uses intention, being
Right.
intentional about what
Right,
you're
right,
doing.
right. And
Mhm.
that's what I was about to say too was I just hired a new singer and he was telling me, hey man, I can't wait to do this and I'm looking for it. And I was like, okay, cool, I got you. I was like, but I'm not looking at your passion. I'm not looking at, how well you get on stage. It's really more of your intent and your will, like really like you gotta have crazy willpower, you know what I mean, to actually want this to happen, you know what I mean? And your intent behind that, willpower changes everything. Because if you have like, well, I'm going to do this, but I'm gonna get up and I'm going to go for the money. Well, cool, you got the willpower, but your intent is kind of off. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah. So what's your goal then? I know I'm gonna let you go, but I just want to ask you really quickly. So what's your goal? Do you want to be famous, or do you want to just do this music career as a thing that you can start being a producer later, but still kind of in the background? Or is it that you want yourself to be on the stage with, in the middle of the Big Apple?
so yes, love the Big Apple. Yes, that would be great. Awesome. Yahweh says it. Thank you. I appreciate all praises. You know, but my actual goal would be to empower 100,000 artists across the country. You know what I mean? To empower pretty much 100,000 people that loves what they do, to empower them to actually do it. You know what I mean? And to actually have some type of stability behind it. You know what I mean? To show some type of stability behind it, to be able to live their lives successfully throughout generational wealth. And that's the motto for me. Really to empower people. You know,
Hmm.
really 100,000 is my top goal. You know what I mean? Goes more than that, then hey. But most likely it'll be that. But the Big Apple, I'm there. You know what I mean? Hey,
I
if I don't get the 100,000 people, hey, y'all gonna see me shining lights. That's definitely what it's gonna be.
get it done. I
Yes.
look, you have our blessing from here, the Lapeef Network. We always love to see people getting things done and making a way, and just keep,
Yes.
like Anton says, keep your intent strong, and I
Yes.
can see you
Yes.
doing it. You come
Thank
from
you so
nothing
much.
and you're blowing up already. You're gonna do just
Well,
fine.
I appreciate this. I appreciate the conversation. I think you're amazing. I think the whole network is amazing. JR's a beast. But love you
He's a
guys. Thank you
genius.
for the time. Thank you.
You're welcome. JR, do you hear that? I'm telling you, everybody recognizes your genius. See, I'm not the only one who sees JR as a mad genius, like mad scientist. Do you guys know, like when you're younger, you see those cartoons and they have a scientist? Now, the scientist is very, very smart, but then his hair is like this. That's JR's beard. And then he's like going crazy, making some crazy experiment, but the experiment is actually genius. But the person looks crazy. I'm not saying you look crazy, JR, much, but I'm just saying, JR, you're genius. Okay. So I guess I guess there's no more callers, right? I think we're good. This is gonna be a shorter stream. That's okay. I know it's kind of a heavy subject, so it is kind of hard to speak about. So I do understand. But thank you guys for joining me on this short live stream about trauma. I know it's hard, very hard, but thank you for joining me, guys. And I guess with that, I'll yield my time. Bye bye.
refrain.